Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited and pleased to have Dr. Silvia Pessoa, Dr. Maria Gomez-Laich, and Dr. Thomas Mitchell here to talk with us about their book and also this 10-year plus project that they've been working on. Unpacking the language of analysis and arguments in higher education is what they're going to be speaking with us about. And we have also Dr. Ramirez, who will be their conversation partner and sort of engage them in some discussion. If anybody has any questions, there is the ability to enter in your question, which we can then take afterwards. We'll hear them discuss for about 35, 45 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions after. So thanks, everybody. I'll let you take it away, Andres.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. Thank you for being here. Wonderful to have you with us. Well, today is not a normal day. It's not a common day. It's actually a very great opportunity to have the privilege of welcoming the authors of Analysis and Argument for First Year Writing and Beyond, a Functional Perspective, Silvia Pessoa, Thomas Mitchell, and Maria Pia Gomez-Laich. This is a book that does more, I think, than teach students how to write. It teaches them how to think, how to recognize meanings in text, and how to communicate powerfully in the world, all throughout a functional perspective. At this heart, the book reminds us that writing is not a mechanical exercise or a checklist or textual moves. Instead, it is deeply social, intellectual, and ethical practice, one through which we learn through knowledge, engage with others' ideas, and locate our own voices within wider conversations. The authors draw on a functional perspective, as I just said, to show how arguments unfold, how language choices shape relationships with readers, and how evidence becomes meaningful within particular contexts and purposes. They help students see writing as something dynamic and consequential. Not an expression for at its own sake, but action in the world. And also, I want to say on a personal note that I have had the joy of watching this research journey unfold over many, many years across conferences, continents, and even time zones. I have seen these ideas presented in rooms of 15 people and more than 100 people. I have watched the model grow, gain clarity, expand, deepen. And I must confess at this point that I am very well number one fan and possibly even an unofficial groupie. If there were kind of like two tour T-shirts, I would definitely own one. So there's an idea. But humor aside, what this book represents is something very rare, a commitment to equity in meaning making, to helping students not simply write academic texts, but understand why these texts matter and how they shape participation in academic, civic, and professional life. It is a book for anyone who believes that education should empower students to enter conversations that have been long close to them and to do so with confidence, clarity, and voice. Please join me in welcoming Silvia, Thomas, and Maria Pia, my dear friends and colleagues, and in celebrating not only this book, but the larger project of building a more reflective, more just, and more linguistically aware educational spaces for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Andres, for the kind words and the flattering words about the work we've done over the years. And I think I speak for the three of us when I say that we have also loved our conversations at conferences and via text messages. So it's always a pleasure to see you online and at conferences. So I guess we can get started. So let me move this slide. Just as Andres was glad and happy when he got the book, we were also glad. And I think this is the first time we saw the book in our hands in October in 2024. So we were happy to see the actual book after we had worked on it so many years. So in our book and this presentation, we're not going to talk about the tools one by one. What we're going to do is focus on how we have scaffolded a specific assignment in one of our first year writing classes using the tools that we present in our book. So each chapter in our book focuses on a specific tool that we have used to address challenges that we've seen our students face in first year writing, but also in writing in the disciplines. And actually, a lot of the work we do in our first year writing classes is informed by the work that we have done throughout our interdisciplinary collaborations. So the first chapter talks basically about the theoretical principles that we have used in our work. I don't think we need to go over those. The second chapter talks about the onion model, which we've used to help students move from what we call knowledge display to knowledge transformation. Then another chapter is about the anatomy, what we call the anatomy of the claim, to help students write effective claims in their argumentative writing. The fourth chapter is about a tool that we've used to help students adopt effective reasoning patterns in their analytical and argumentative writing. The fifth is about engagement and specifically about resources that we have used to help students align the reader towards their perspectives. The sixth is about resources that we have used with our students to help them justify a position among alternatives, especially when they are writing recommendations in assignments such as a case proposal. And the seventh is about tips for assigning and assessing argumentative writing. So as I said, again, I'm not going to talk about the tools in detail, but we are going to focus on this specific assignment that we use in one of our first year writing classes, which is a case analysis. And one of the reasons we've incorporated this assignment in our first year writing classes is because it's very similar to the type of writing and the type of reasoning many of our students will do in their disciplinary classes in information systems, organizational behavior, and business administration. So our classes are topic-based, and the second major assignment is this case analysis, which asks students to select a case related to the topic of the class. The topic of the class this semester is taste and distinction, and we read parts of a text of Bourdieu's book Distinction. So students relate or choose a case that they are interested in, and they have to analyze a case, the case of their choosing, to argue about the complexities and characteristics of the problems that are associated with that case or what the case actually represents. And then they need to support their position using details from the case, the course readings that they read in the class, and outside sources that they find through their own research. So as the title of the assignment says, it's a case analysis. So one of the first things we need to tell our students and to teach them is what analysis means, because not all instructors know what they actually mean when they ask their students to do or engage in analysis. So in order to help our students, we introduced the onion model, which is a model of academic writing that sees the layers of description, analysis, and argument as interdependent. So description is basically reproducing knowledge by summarizing or presenting a list of facts, and this stays at the level of knowledge display. But in this specific assignment, we want our students to engage in knowledge transformation, to engage in analysis, using the disciplinary well, not the discipline, but the framework, the lens that we use in our class, which is Bourdieu's framework, to analyze and reorganize information for the purposes of this specific assignment, which is the case analysis. And once they have done this analysis work, we want them to make claims, so basically engage in argument, and support those claims with reasons and evidence. Another thing we do to help our students with this specific assignment is deconstruct the process of analysis and planning the assignment. So our work is actually very visual in many cases, and we've seen that this has helped our students understand the process that they need to go through to write this specific assignment. So first they need to understand the text, and they need to start understand the assignment. Once they understand that, they look at a specific case of their interest, and it can be something they know about through personal experience or something they have read about in the news. They do research on the case, they brainstorm and describe the case, and then they start seeing, this is where the analysis comes in, they start seeing which concepts from the framework of distinction kind of fits the case. So what elements of my case are related to symbolic boundaries, to social capital, to cultural capital? And once they have done that analysis, they are in a position to make a claim about what the case represents using keywords from the framework and combining those to make a claim about the case. And then, of course, they need to support those claims using evidence from the case and knowledge from the text on distinction and the outside sources that they have done research on. And now Silvia is going to walk you through the next thing we do with our, oh, actually, no, I forget one slide. So we also talk about the importance of keywords. So the keywords, again, in many cases come, or in all cases, come from the disciplinary framework. The slide that you have on the screen is related to another topic we did a couple of years ago, which was inequality. So these specific students, actually, this is a mentor text that we wrote about inequality in access to higher education in Chile. So we did this analysis and we looked at the specific features of the case that were related to specific concepts from the disciplinary framework. So some of them were related to democratic inequality, some parts of the case related to issues in unequal access to cultural capital and to social class reproduction. So this is the type of work that we want our students to do. So now, Silvia, I'll pass it on to you so that you can talk about writing effective claims.
Sure. So we have the students do all this, analytical work, put all, their lens of Bourdieu to look at whatever case they choose. It could be a person, a community, a group of people, their high school, whatever they're looking at, and they try to analyze it and reconstruct all the information of the case using the disciplinary lens, and then they need to make claims. But over the years, we found that students by the idea that they have to make claims. So many times we tell them, okay, now we have to write claims using our keywords, our key concepts to say something about the case, something that needs to be defended with evidence and support. But the students many times just write definitions, or they write facts. They tell us about Bourdieu. They tell us about, the case. They give a narrative of the case or a history of the case, but they're not writing the claims using the key concepts, and they're not writing statements that answer the how and the why. So we have to work a lot also on unpacking what these claims do. So we start by telling the students that claims use, these disciplinary keywords to package a lot of information. So we give them examples and we show them how these keywords, upward mobility and economic capital, cultural capital, they're all coming from our framework that we're using to analyze the case, and we're using to say a lot, but in a few words. So, typical grammatical metaphor and nominalization. So we, instead of telling the student, instead of narrating the case of a student, this student was poor and then he worked hard and went to school and became, had more money, whatever, we say all of that has to do with upward mobility. All of that has to do with education. So that's where the visualization of how the grouping of the case information is useful, and then they can use that to write claims that are making evaluations, claims that are characterizing social phenomena, claims that are using, relational verbs and evaluations to say something about the case. So for example, here, access to quality education is rare. So we are making an evaluation, right? And a lot of the claims that students make and that we make when we argue rely on causal relations. So, the little words like because and so and lead to and contribute to, all of those can be very powerful to help the students, come up with evaluations and claims that then are unpacked with their analysis of the case. So for us, experienced writers, this comes, naturally, but it doesn't for our students. So making it very explicit goes a long way. So in class, we do exercises like this where we give them, a pair of sentences and we say which one is an argumentative claim and which one is not. Okay, so here's like a typical description, and here is something that has evaluations and causal relations, and it's saying something about the case using some of the key concepts that we talked about. We look at number 2 here, where this is a definition and it's not a claim, or this one 3A is a description as opposed to B that is saying something about the case. With, in this class, the concept, the theme was urban development and segregation in the city. So the students are able to say something about the case, and the case here was the Pearl, and they're able to say that it contributes to social segregation in the city. So again, it's when we see it, it's easy, but it takes a long way for the students to get there. And before we had all this meta language and all these tools to do it, I remember that Tom and I sat there and thinking, how can we help the students do this? And we could see that something was happening, but we didn't have the meta language to talk to the students about it. So this really helped. So the students do the analysis, they write the claims, but then there's a lot of work that needs to happen at the paragraph level, which Tom will tell you about.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, so they've gone from doing all this pre-planning work. They've got an idea of how to anchor a paragraph in a claim, but then we still need to be explicit about how they actually show their reasoning and show their analysis and make their analysis happen in writing. And so with that, we really found we've adapted work by Jing Hao in biology lab reports, where she talked about the students writing about what they saw, through the microscope, for example, connecting that to what they knew from their textbook, and then drawing a conclusion based on whether what they saw kind of aligned or didn't align with what they would expect to see, literally maybe on a petri dish or something like that. And so we've adapted that, and we use it as kind of like a flexible heuristic for helping students. Yeah, Pia, could you just go back for, yeah, thanks. A flexible heuristic to help them, establish their reasoning positions and avoid what we call, or what is called in legitimation code theory, is meaning flat lines. So we connect this to the idea of the semantic wave, helping students understand that they need to move between more abstract ideas, such as their conclude move, like we see with the kind of opening claim, and the abstract kind of closing conclusion, and then concrete case details. And so they do this by anchoring their claim in knowledge from the sources that we've read, kind of expanding on what the key concepts are that they're drawing on for this analysis, and maybe drawing kind of smaller level conclusions, helping the reader understand that that they're going to connect this, kind of locate this knowledge in their specific case, describing concrete details from the case. So this is, we tie back to the onion, where you might have some pure description of just case information. And then, and then perhaps drawing another smaller level conclusion, saying something about kind of what that means, maybe bringing in more evidence, as we see in this one, maybe even going back to the same source or another source to kind of consolidate, tie back to, disciplinary knowledge that wouldn't have made sense before bringing in some of the case information, and then ending with a more abstract conclusion that kind of expands on the ideas that have been presented in the paragraph. And so what we've seen is that we're pretty inflexible with the students in terms of you need to open with a conclude, what we call a conclude move, and close with a conclude move. Within the paragraph, then we see them kind of adapting the heuristic in somewhat creative ways, but we see that the most successful students are usually anchoring the paragraph early on with some disciplinary knowledge. And they're usually using some sort of logical connection with a smaller level conclude to connect their concrete evidence. And so then we might see some variation. We often see kind of a series of 2 or 3 conclude moves at the end of the paragraph as the student kind of expands out and gets more and more abstract or generalized. And so that's kind of some of the stuff that Pia is going to talk about now, about like what we're doing to kind of really figure out what's going on in our most successful student work.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. So one of the things we realize, as this is a learning process for us too, is that in many cases our students had all the moves. They would come to conferences with Silvia, with Tom, or with me, and would say, "But why did I not get a great grade if I have my C, I have my conclude, I have my I know?" And then we started trying to figure out how successful students moved between these reasoning positions. So that's the most recent type of work that we have been doing. So we've been analyzing how they move again from this open and conclude move to an I know, and we've coded our highest graded assignments not only for the reasoning position but also for the logical connections or the internal connections that are most commonly used or most frequently used by these high graded assignments. And we have also coded typical language resources and sample phrases that they use to move between and within this reasoning position. So for example, as Tom mentioned, our students start with a conclude move, which is the claim that drives the whole paragraph, and then they usually move to an I know move that introduces a sort do that through relational processes or technical noun groups. And then in general, they move from that I know to an I conclude move that basically uses some form of comparison logical connection to bring us back to the case that they are going to talk about. And they usually do that through phrases such as, this concept, let's say, of cultural matching can be applied to, this helps us explain X, Y, Z. And then they usually do different types of IC moves, sometimes grounded in specific evidence that they have seen, but sometimes more, a little bit more abstract. So narrative evidence, but they also do layers of sources. And then again, they bring us back to that conclude, which ends the paragraph, tying back to the opening conclude, usually through a logical connection of consequence. And they say these responses or these forces, this contributes to an equal access, let's say, to education in Chile, etc. So this is the most recent work that we have been doing. And just as Andres had this idea about the t-shirts, Celia had the great idea that our students should get very familiar with the meta language that we use in the class, and she came up with the idea that we should do a slogan contest. So students submitted slogans, and then we chose the winners, and these are just some of the... Are these the winners, Sylvia? I'm not sure if these are the winners or if these are just some examples. Sylvia, you're muted.
Sorry. Yes, the middle one is one of the winning slogans, and the one to the right also. And then we just thought we also became creative ourselves and decided to print t-shirts. And also we are a group of 7 English faculty. So not everyone is into our meta language. So we couldn't just print all t-shirts that were, functional meta language.
Yes,
So we had to be open to other writing pedagogies. But we are so
yes,
excited about our meta language on t-shirts and stickers.
yes. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, thank you so much for staying with us, and I guess we can open the floor for questions.
Thank you very much, everybody. I want to tell, now you know why I am a groupie, a fan of these wonderful colleagues and their work. And I wanted to tell you all that please ask any question on the chat. I'm going to get us started with some questions. Before I actually begin with the questions specifically, I wanted to probably like tell Silvia, Maria Pia, and Thomas if they could actually tell us a little bit more about their context, about the kind of students they teach, where you are, and so that all others can relate. I am very familiar, but maybe some that were late were not are not as familiar.
Yeah, should I go? No, Silvia, I guess because you have been in the country for many more years than the rest of us.
Sure, yes. So we teach at Carnegie Mellon University in Qatar, in the Middle East. I've been here for almost 20 years, and Pia and Tom for 10 and 15 years. So we know our context very, very well. Carnegie Mellon here is an undergraduate campus, so we only teach undergraduate students that are majoring in business administration, computer science, and STEMs. So we teach first year writing as part of their general education. So that's how we get students exposed to this perspective on writing. Our students are multilingual. 40% of them come from Qatar, and then they are Qatari, and they went to international schools or schools in both English and Arabic. And then we have other local students that went to, the Indian School of Qatar or the Filipino School of Qatar in English and other languages. And then we have international students from all over the world. So students come to us with very varied experiences in terms of academic reading and writing. And I think over the years, we've seen that students come to us stronger and stronger in their academic skills. But interestingly, these tools have proven to be very, very useful for the students that don't come with, a lot of experience reading and writing academically. So these tools really help the students make a big jump, and they also help the very sophisticated students also do very interesting things with their writing. So for the last 15 years, we've been collecting and analyzing student writing and looking at the student uptake. This semester, I teach a wonderful class of first year students, most of them majoring in computer science. So they are so smart, so sophisticated. Every day I leave my class being so happy because they just make my day. And of course, now they just submitted their case analysis draft. And I was like, oh, wow, these students need the explicit instruction. I, I exposed them to all of these tools, and I still had to give them a lot of feedback, which shows that even very sophisticated students, they were using the tools, but they still need a lot of support in order to do something that they haven't done before, because for the most part, it's a new genre for them.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So let me start with a question that actually Loretta also points out in the chat, and it's about the uptake of these tools by the students and by the faculty. So how has been the on the receiving end students and faculty? And also, given that you created these tools specifically for these students, but do you have any comments or like how these have been taken up by other populations that you didn't expect it, that you originally didn't intended to?
I let
Sure.
Tom or Pia comment.
Yeah, I was reading, Lorita. Thank you for your question. So the students, at least the ones I have, and I think Sylvia and Tom will share the same, they do use the meta language, especially when they come to our offices for conferences. So they point to the text they wrote and they say, again, this is my X move, this is my other move. So here I'm doing description, here I'm doing, this is my argument. We actually implemented a new assignment this semester to kind of combat the use of AI, and they have to defend an outline. So they come and they bring, this is my main argument, these are my claims, and this is where I'm using the specific concept from the class that will guide my synthesis paper. So I'm not teaching the class Silvia is teaching, I'm teaching out, but they do this, so they do use the meta language. I would say that we have a harder time with the uptake of the meta language by instructors of the first year writing program who have other backgrounds, and sometimes they have this idea that we want to take over the university with the meta language that we are using. But for the most part, the students we have taught use it, and then sometimes we see them later in their academic careers, in this when they are seniors or juniors, and they still remember these I know, I see, I conclude, just as they remember the authors they read, which usually surprises me. They still remember the authors and the texts they read in our first year writing classes. And I think, Andres, you have a question about how other populations have used. I'm not entirely sure, but in conferences, the other we were with Tom at the symposium on second language writing, and there was a girl that's doing her PhD in Melbourne with Naomi Storch, and she said, I read about your application of the onion model, and I'm using it in collaborative writing with the students I'm teaching at the moment. So I don't know exactly how it's been used in other contexts, but hopefully the tools that we present in the book, again, they were helpful for our students, but ideally they can be applied to other contexts as well.
Yeah, and one other kind of anecdote about that would be there's someone that we spoke with at TESOL, I believe, who's in University of California system, who, some of our work in the early chapters talks about unpacking prompts with students to help them understand when an assignment is just asking for description, or when it might just be asking for analysis, but not argument, and how to kind of unpack those prompts with the students. And this goes back to work we did with Ryan Miller, who I see in the group there, a long time ago. And they say that they work to they use those prompts or variations of them to kind of help their students kind of socialize to the university and be ready for things that they're gonna kind of get in their classes across the disciplines.
And if I can add something else, as we work a lot with instructors in the disciplines, with Tom last year, we did a collaboration with someone in the economics department, and they wanted us to help the students be able to talk about data in their research papers. The students would repeat p-value is this, but they actually didn't interpret the data. So we developed some materials, and in reality it helped the instructor understand what they wanted the students to do. And now they do their own little writing workshop using the language that we gave them, but more tailored to what he understood he wanted the students to do.
And that also makes me think of like faculty uptake through the interdisciplinary collaborations that we've had. some have really taken it and run with it and would end up kind of delivering the workshops on their own using the meta language that we had worked with. Others, we had a colleague who was presenting on the Onion model at his information systems conferences, so very enthusiastic about it. And then others who like, okay, yeah, I changed one prompt because I think you were right. Maybe it wasn't really asking for argument, but otherwise kind of keep on doing their same old thing. Even though they welcomed us in the class to give workshops, we documented how the workshops helped. And, I think we all get kind of set in our ways, I think. So I think we see uptake kind of across the spectrum with the faculty, at least.
Oh, thank you. Well, it looks like the idea of meta language and all that is really hot. Becky Wong also talks about that, and I can see two of my collaborators in Colombia, Cristian Londoño from Universidad Antioquia and Julia Andrea González from Universidad La Salle, and a teacher that I work with in Colombia. We have also seen how the meta language integrated into the teaching, not simply devoting some certain time to meta language, but actually making it part of what they do. Actually, it's very, very important. And to your point, Loretta, like young kids, like we're working with third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, they actually incorporate that meta language very naturally into actually peer evaluation of other kids. Like, so they're using like, you didn't use enough, this kind of thing, or your classification could be a little bit more, all that is embedded into what we are, what Julia Andrea is teaching in their classroom. So I just wanted to just give you a little bit of that that idea, since meta language was so embedded there. I don't know if you could address a little bit more about meta language, if you agree, or how do you do it?
I mean, I think what's key is to use what Sally Humphrey calls bridging meta language, right? So we don't go in with like, SFL terminology, and even, the chart that we showed you last about our most recent work, how to connect the reasoning positions and transition from conclude to know and to see. We don't label those things to the students like, this is means, this is addition, this is comparison, because it's really, we don't want to bombard them with meta language.
It is a
But
high semantic wave or a low semantic wave.
yes. So we simplified. Of the visualizations help a lot, and we want to give credit to Michael Muni, who worked with us here in Qatar also, who did amazing work with the visualizations and bringing these that lived in our heads, bring it to visually to the students. So the bridge meta language and how we talk to the students about it, it's really important in a way that they can see it. And of course, using mentor text. So using all kinds of mentor text and showing them, lots of different possibilities. So today, I went into my class and I asked the students, did you find, I know, I see, and I conclude useful? And these are, very sophisticated students. And they say, yes, yes, yes. But then I saw some faces of students that were like, and I said, okay, tell me, we need to know this. And they were like, oh, sometimes, I know that it helped, but I also felt a little constrained. And then I wanted to write more and I wanted to say more. And then I said, okay, what happened when you wanted to write more and say more? And then they were like, oh, we saw the feedback and you said that, oh, we went a little bit off topic, or we went into some other direction and we didn't stay where we needed, or like we needed more evidence. So they say it's a different way of thinking about it, but it helps. But it's interesting to hear, the very sophisticated students. And I've heard from the very sophisticated students, it's like, I just write. It just comes natural to me. I can do this. I don't think about no, see, conclude. And I said, well, that's because you are more experienced. But the less experienced writers in our classes, this really helps them because it makes this explicit. And we look at the text that students read, by our published authors. We look at them at how they write, and we say, hey, are they using no, see, conclude when, the authors that we read, they are analyzing cases and we, using Bourdieu, and then they are presenting their analysis and their writing. So we look at what expert writers are doing, how they are doing it, how they're using the disciplinary framework to analyze the case. So we look at how they do it, we look at samples of students, paragraphs, and how students do it, and then we look at paragraphs that maybe don't have enough see or don't have enough no, and then we talk about how they can be enhanced. So I think variety and consistent use of the meta language pays off.
Thank you very much. Before I would like to invite you to take a look at Sergio Álvarez Uribe's question from Universidad del Norte, but it needs a little bit of comprehending because it's kind of like really deep. Thank you, Sergio, for that answer. So while you think about that, I wanted to ask you about now that you mentioned the constraints, like some students find this constraining or not. I wonder, like it has been interesting that SFL usually has these criticisms that are usually similar, like terminology, too much, or something like that. Genre-based pedagogy has also been like, okay, so it's kind of like constraining and all that. And I wonder, what have been the criticisms of your work? How have you responded? And also, if these criticisms of the bigger theoretical framework or practical framework that you have in your approach actually mirror the criticisms to your approach, if anything, if at all.
I can address I think the question, let me read it. Yeah, you're right. So these are more theoretical argumentation. So these are mostly based on the types of assignments that our students write. But if you look at the chapter, I forget, I think it's chapter 6. The one that's about justification. So that's a slightly different type of argumentation because in reality, most of the students are given a recommendation for a company to improve its practices. So that's more on the side of what should the reader do or what should the company do to improve. So those are slightly different. We didn't address them in this presentation because they didn't really fit with the specific assignment that we used to illustrate the tools. But I agree that these are more theoretical argumentations. And as per criticisms, I think the one that at least this semester, at the beginning of the semester, one of our colleagues said, oh, but you teach them a formula. And I think I went to Silvia and Tom. I was like, why do they think we teach a formula? Because in reality, when you say, I know, I see, I conclude, your paragraph needs to see that. If you only look at it as having a couple of components, maybe you could think that it's a formula, but that's not the way we teach it in our classes. So as Silvia said, we use mentor texts that have a baseline of what's potentially acceptable. But then most of our students are very creative. Well, not most, but many of our students, especially the more experienced writers, are very creative in the ways that they uptake these heuristics that we give them. So we don't see it as teaching them a formula. We see them as tools that help them think and organize their writing.
Yeah, and I would just add on to the question from Sergio. Like Pia said, like we designed this specific assignment to mirror the type of writing that most of our students do the most after we don't see them anymore in their upper level classes and their disciplinary classes. And so we only have 4 disciplines. Computer science students don't write at all in their discipline. Biology students write a very specific kind of thing that we're still trying to get our get a handle on and collaborate with them to do more to prepare those students. But they're also probably the smallest major. And then the biggest two majors are business and information systems. And the most prevalent genre that they write is some version of a case analysis that has the recommendations like Pia is talking about, that have a different type of claims and slightly different type of reasoning. But like the thing that we've seen they have the most trouble with is the kind of analysis part where they have to apply the framework to the details of the case. And so we're trying to kind of get them ready for that and get them ready for the type of claims that will work with that. We've looked at in the anatomy of the claim chapter in the book. There's a couple of examples from history that are much more kind of grounded. Like although a few laws from Hammurabi's code protected women, for the most part, laws showed great gender inequality in Babylonia. So a little bit abstract. They're not telling somebody what to do, but maybe not quite as abstract as the ones that we were showing today. Yeah.
And I think, when our colleagues in our own English department, they are resistant to this meta language, I think part of it is that they don't understand it, they don't take the time to understand it, and then they don't see that, we are not doing anything that is against the way they see writing. We still see writing as learning, as thinking, as a process. We see we think of writing as, we think of the purpose, of the context, of the audience. We think about the rhetorical situation, and what we do is bring language to that, something that is forgotten in many ways of teaching writing, and students are just expected to know how to do this. But if you don't make it explicit, it's hard for the students, and it's hard when they are, coming across new genres all the time. And it's hard, even we, very experienced writers, right? When we are asked to write something that we never wrote before, we ask our colleagues for a sample. We don't know how to do X, so we say, oh, can I see an example? And then because we are into language, we know how to read the example and how to unpack it to understand expectations. But our students don't know how to do that because they don't have the tools to do it. So that's what we're trying to do, make it explicit, so then students can play with the expectations.
And I did forget to say we kind of try to prepare students for that by doing a comparative genre analysis that then transitions to an open letter. So they kind of repurpose oftentimes, but they don't have to, their case analysis assignment argument into a public argument, in which case they're much more likely to be making the kind of claims that Sarah Hill is talking about as well. So we do some coaching of that.
Thank you very much. My next question is about vision, about future. Specifically, there are some challenges and opportunities with regards to the rise of artificial intelligence. And also, based on that or any other work that you've done, have you developed any new tools in the publication of the book? How do you see your work evolving in the next 10 years that I'll be a fan as well?
So who wants to take?
Yeah, go ahead with our new project.
Yeah, so we recently got awarded a grant to keep working on these tools. We're slightly changing how we have collaborated with instructors. As you know, in the past, we're very much present in the classes and with the instructors with whom we collaborated. So we would give workshops in the classes, and sometimes even give feedback on the writing. And so that model of collaboration became somewhat unsustainable. And another problem was that we're in Qatar, and sometimes people come here for a couple of years and they move to another country, and in many cases they move with that knowledge. And so it lives with them. It doesn't live in the class where other instructor that then replaces them might uptake. So we are moving to a model of collaboration where we are going to develop instructional videos that will live on Canvas, which is the platform that we use at our institution, still collaborating with instructors as much as we can, and also collecting as much data as we can. In terms of new tools, we are still working, as we mentioned at the end of the presentation, looking at what happens inside the moves and how the reasoning between the moves, how that is happening. And as per AI, we have I'm not sure if the question was how we have adapted our.
Well, challenges or opportunities.
Yes, so this is interesting because our book basically came out right at the boom of AI, so it seemed kind of outdated by the time it came out. So we are using an AI tool that I'm not sure, probably Ryan Miller is familiar with. We tried to implement an AI tool that's called My Prose. The basic the idea behind the tool is that it doesn't write for the students, but it gives them suggestions. So it looks at students writing and says, okay, here, this is an area where you could improve. The claims might not be clear, but it doesn't write for them. It's kind of like a tutor, but it doesn't, again, so the students cannot outsource their writing so that the tool generates ideas or creates a text for them. They have to input their notes. So there's a function from notes to prose. So it can take some of the notes and transform them to prose, but it doesn't write extensively for the students. I've used it in my class to help students look at claims and the logic between or within a paragraph. But we try to stay away. Last year we allowed AI use in our classes. It didn't go very well, so this year we've moved to a lot of in-class writing, which we now also have to analyze to see if there are lots of differences between the writing students can produce in class and the writing the students produce outside of class. And we moved also to some form of oral examination where they defend their outlines and they talk about their main claims, how they came up with the main claims. So basically for us to see their reasoning process. So we're focusing more on the process sometimes than the actual product.
But still the meta language is very vivid because in their oral presentation or defense of their outlines, they're using the meta language. We also, in the English class that I teach, the students used to write a synthesis. So we will read all these authors that are writing about taste and distinction using Bourdieu. And now with AI, the students can easily ask an AI to write a synthesis of what these authors are saying about taste and distinction. So instead, we do what we call a discernment task. We give the students 2 introductions or 2 body paragraphs or 2 syntheses or 2 argument analysis in the other English class, and we ask the students in an in-class activity which text is more effective in meeting genre expectations using the meta language that we talked about in class. So the students have to say, oh, text A is more effective than B because it's doing A, B, and C, and they need to use evidence from these 2 texts that we give them. So again, the meta language is clear and vivid there because they have to evaluate the text using the meta language. So we've been experimented a lot with that, and we will continue to collect data to see, where all of this will take us.
Mike looks like he has his hand up. Shout out to Mike for the visualizations in our
Hi,
book and
Mike.
also
Thank
help
you.
developing a lot of the ideas there too.
Thank you for
Yes.
the shout out. Good to see you guys.
So-
I had a question since we're talking about AI. I know that one of the tricky things about using genre-based pedagogy is finding appropriate mentor texts, especially ones that demonstrate the moves that we want the students to make. And I'm wondering, have you explored the idea of using AI to write the mentor text and like training it, illustrate these particular moves? Is that something that you're exploring? Or what do you think of it?
Yeah, I certainly have. So I in the first writing class, in the first, it's a reading and writing in an academic context, we also do a synthesis paper. No, sorry, not a synthesis paper. We do a discernment task about an argument analysis. Students have to say which argument analysis is more effective than the other. So I had to create two, and I knew which one was going to be more effective than the other, but I didn't completely write them myself. So I did ask a Notebook LM and also ChatGPT. It took a lot of prompting because I didn't like anything that AI produced on the first try. So it was a lot of conversation, let's say, about what I wanted it to produce. In many cases, I think it has issues with claims. It's very descriptive. So it took me quite a bit of time, but I think it can help. And then once you create a model that you like, then you can upload that and ask it to mimic with another topic. So yeah, I do quite a bit of work with AI myself.
Pia is younger than me, so she does, the technology and the AI seems to come more easily to her. Every time I try it, I just feel it takes me even more time than if I would just do it myself. And then I get all,
Yes.
confused. And then I'm like, oh, but I like that, but I don't like this. And then I think it has helped me sometimes as a starting thinking tool, but then I usually just end up doing it myself. But I think something that Tom and I have talked about, in our first year writing classes, we think it's really important that students learn some of these foundational, writing skills. If the students don't have these foundational writing skills, they're not going to be able to discern what AI is giving them. So, we are experienced writers. So when AI gives us something, we know if it's good or not because we are experienced writers. But if students don't know that, that's when they just submit something to us, whatever, and we are like, this is not you, this is AI generated, and it doesn't meet, genre expectations. So we think it's really important to teach these foundational skills. But in upper level classes, I think there's an opportunity to teach prompting. I think there's an opportunity to teach the students how to engage with AI. And I think this is where we are going to move into, in the future. We're not there quite yet. But Tom and I teach an upper level class on, writing for the professions. And in Pittsburgh, on the main campus of the university in the US, the information systems faculty teaching how to write a proposal for a company, they tell the students, yes, please use AI, please make the proposal, better. We don't want to see anything that is crazy because we are not writing teachers and we don't have time to deal with giving you feedback on proposals. So the students are free to use AI for their proposal writing. But then Tom and I think, how are they using AI? What questions are they asking? How are they prompting AI? So I think there's an opportunity there to do something with students.
Wonderful. We're reaching the end of our talk. Sabrina, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you all for the wonderful information. I agree. I'm also teaching doctoral level classes where claim and academic writing is front and center, and always trying to figure out how to do better, right? How can we use the tools? So thank you so much. I echo many of the comments that have been provided about how useful it is. I don't have other questions. Do you, Andres, or comments? Do you have something you want to say about Len?
Yeah, I just shared a website for the Language and Literacy in Education Network. Different chapters across the world are being developed out of this chapter. So I wanted to tell you that in North America, we are creating the LENA, what we call the LENA, meaning the Language and Literacy in Education North America. So please stay tuned. We will be talking more about this. We are just studying, and this is just going to be supported by NASFLA. So thank you very much for you attending, and we hope to see you in our next conversations with NASFLA. And please get engaged and involved with Lena. With Latin America, there's also another one. In Europe, there's another one, and we are just kind of beginning across the world. But NASFLA has been very great. We're grateful because NASFLA is supporting as well these efforts. So thank you very much, Sabrina, for hosting. Thank you very much to Silvia, Thomas, and Maria Pia. Muchas gracias. People in Uruguay, Argentina, and the United States are really happy, really your mother's families, and we are all very, very proud of you. Muy agradecidos. If anybody wants to say last thing in the chat, that would be great. But please stay tuned for next NASFLA conversations. I believe we have already a NASFLA conversation going on next time, Sabrina.
We are, yes, I am planning with Michael Moore and colleagues to set that up. It will take place in the spring, so you'll hear about it in a few months' time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye, everybody.
everybody.
Thank you for coming.
Lovely
Thank
seeing
you.
Thank you so much.